Hi, everyone. My name is Steve Gaynor. I am the community coordinator for socialbizug.org, and welcome to our Member of the Month 5 Questions with Peter Presnell. Peter, how are you today?
I'm excellent, thanks, Steve. How are you?
I'm very good. It's good to finally get to meet you. We've exchanged a few emails. Before I go any further, I have my list of questions, but I had no idea. Is the accent that I'm hearing, is that Australian?
That's an excellent guess. Yes, it certainly is. I was born and raised in Australia, but I've been living here in the US for about 14 years now.
Well, what part of Australia, may I ask?
Well, I grew up in Tasmania, the island to the south, and then I moved to Melbourne to study, and then I started working there until I moved to the US.
Well, that's some place that I have always wanted to go, and hopefully one of these days I will be able to make it. Everything I've ever heard about it has been wonderful.
They want to have a great user group down there. I think it's going to be in August this year, so I'm sure if you can find a way to get down there, you'll have a great time.
Oh, yeah, that would be good.
I mean, there must be a member of the month that you have to go and do live down there, right? Just to just to justify the whole thing.
Ooh, I wonder if I could sell that.
Let's work on that.
All right, so let's get on with it here. Peter, please give me your elevator resume. What's your job title? What do you do for a living? That sort of thing.
Okay, so my job title is CEO at Red Pill Development. Basically, I do almost anything associated with notes. I have been doing that for, I believe, 21 years now. I started back in 1993 when Notes was just moving from Notes 2 to Notes 3.
Excellent. And since you are the CEO at Red Pill, can you tell us how did Red Pill come about? What is your company's focus? And just for me, how'd you come up with the name Red Pill?
Okay, so well, let's start with the origins of the name.
Okay.
It comes from the movie The Matrix and the offering of choice between the red pill and the blue pill. And there's actually a lot of imagery that we draw from the movie that was behind many of the concepts that are in our product. And we basically offer people the choice to take the red pill to see how far the rabbit hole goes, or they can take the blue pill and wake up in the morning and it will be as if nothing has changed.
I see. All right. So let's go back then. So how did it come about? How did you decide to start this company?
Well, yeah, I could probably combine. Should we let the audience know that you actually let me know the questions ahead of time, that this
That's
isn't all impromptu?
that's all right. Like I told you, I do not do Geraldo Rivera ambush interviews.
Right, so this is not Katie Couric, right?
No, no. I
So
don't have the legs for it
the
anyway.
next question you have is give an example of a business problem and how I solved it. Right, so I'm actually would like to combine the two questions into one because Red Pill actually came about as a result of how we needed to solve a particular problem. Okay, so if I want to roll back a little, as I mentioned, I've been living here in the US for 14 years. About 4 years ago, I think it was, I had a call from Nathan Freeman, who many people would know, and he gave me the opportunity to work as part of an amazing team of people that he was putting together at GBS on a project called Transformer. So I got the chance to move over here to Atlanta, where I now live, working with a great team of people. We had people like Chris Toohey, Chris Wisner, Keith Strickland, Nathan Freeman, Tim Tripconi, Paul Calhoun, Brad Balasitis. You know, it was a virtual who's who of the Notes community. So it was an awesome opportunity for me to mix myself with a bunch of really great people. So we worked on that project for a couple of years, and for those 2 years, we never actually had the opportunity to connect with customers, and it was only after we put considerable time and effort into developing that particular product, we got some interesting feedback. The original premise that we'd been working on was that we would take Notes client applications, migrate them across to X Pages, and they would get basically the same application, but now it would be running on the X Pages platform rather than Notes client platform. So that's what we set out to do, and it was a major technical challenge, and we eventually got to that point. But then when we started to show it to people, the feedback we got was not what we expected. They were saying, but it's still a Notes client application. And we said, yeah, well, that's pretty much what we said we was going to do. What they were expecting was that the Notes applications were now going to start behaving like their web applications. And that wasn't quite what we'd expected. For many reasons, we put fidelity as the key thing. So we wanted to make sure the applications behaved the same. There was less training, less documentation. It was easy to test and so forth. But instead, what we was finding was that people weren't migrating away from the Notes client because they hated the Notes client, but rather they wanted modern experiences with web browsers and mobile devices, which was coming out. So we got together and thought about what it is that we needed to do, and we basically decided that it was a completely different approach was needed to solve that particular problem. So we presented that back to management. At the time, there was a lot of upheaval within GBS, and they said, no, we're not interested in that. Can you go away to Office Depot and basically get some duct tape and some WD-40 and apply it to what we'd already done? And we said, no, we could possibly do that, but that wasn't really going to solve what the customer was really wanting. So having confronted that problem, we decided, well, okay, we're going to stick with what we believe in. And we decided that instead of continuing to apply duct tape and WD-40, we'd actually form our own company, which was Red Pill Development. So there was 4 of us at the time, Nathan Freeman, Keith Strickland, Tim Tripconi and myself, set up this new company called Red Pill Development with a goal of actually developing our vision for how you could modernize Notes applications. So that's fundamentally what Red Pill does. And we believe so much in the idea that we formed our own company to do it.
Outstanding. All right, well then, since you combined 2 of my questions, I'm going to throw another one at you. Don't worry, this one's easy.
We're going to have 5, right?
All right, so you said you were going to take these Notes client applications and move them to X Pages. Mm-hmm. So there's a great line in a movie, I forget which movie now, but where the guy says, "Explain this to me like I'm a 4-year-old." So what benefits were you looking for of moving a Notes client application into X Pages? I understand that you were eventually the client wanted this web page experience, but what were you guys looking for? What benefits would moving it into X Pages give you?
Solely from what we were doing with Transformer, or from what we do with Red Pill?
Oh, you decide.
Okay. Well, so let's not dwell in the past. Let's look at the future. So, the world of technology changes rapidly. So what people are expecting today is largely based upon new experiences. Everyone has a smartphone these days. They download apps for free, and the expectation for software has actually changed considerably over the past few years. The speed at which changes are made, and Notes tends to come out with new versions every 1 or 2 years. In the mobile world, if you look at an app and it hasn't had an update for 2 or 3 months, you largely consider it's been abandoned. Okay, so the world is changing fast, and customer expectations are being dictated based upon based upon the software that you're using. And IBM, in their infinite wisdom, decided a number of years ago that they were no longer going to enhance the Notes client platform with new features such as building mobile access and web access. So those simple things cannot be done with the Notes client. Not easily. So you need to actually exploit the capabilities of X Pages to do that. Because X Pages is where IBM is investing their energy. So it is possible, for instance, and why you need it is because 24/7 access to information is now expected.
Yes.
by most people. You will have things like mergers and acquisitions, where a company would come be acquired, where the acquired company doesn't have the Notes client. So one of the fastest ways that you can give access to Notes applications is to give them a browser access to those applications, as an example. So if you want people to be making the most of the information, you need to provide it in a platform that they can access. We've heard stories of executives, for instance, who access their desktop, once a week if they're lucky, because they're always out at meetings, they're always traveling and so forth. So for them, they're really starting to demand mobile access to those applications because they can access so much other information from those devices. And so they start to say, well, why not Notes? And the bottom line is, yes, it is fairly easy to do with Notes, but you have to make that platform switch to X Pages.
Right. And what is it with executives, and how do I get that job to be an executive and not know how to use a computer?
Well, it's not that they don't know how to use computers. It's just that they no longer sit down at a desktop to access their info. I mean, most people know how to use a smartphone fairly well, whether it's an Android or an iPhone or those other more obscure brands.
Right. All right, let me shift gears here. Unless I'm mistaken, your user group, Atlug, you recently had a Day of Champions. Am I saying that wrong? Was it Day of Champions?
It was called the Day of Champions, but to confuse things, it was actually a 2-day event.
Oh, it was 2 days.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yes. We started out with a 1-day event. We wanted to renew interest in the local user community. Atlug meets quarterly, and it tends to be a lunchtime meeting where we'd have 1 or 2 topics. And with the diversity of topics that we now have in the social collaboration space, it's challenging to provide enough content to be relevant to everybody. So we wanted to put together a special day, and we also wanted to modernize the experience. So we looked at a lot of things that are happening out there, and we decided to change up the format from the traditional lug format. So what we did was we started out the day with what we called a speed roaring, which was a bit like the combination of speed geeking and speed sponsoring that you see at Connect and various lugs. It was a good way to get started. Everyone got to rotate around and hear from the various speakers before we kicked off the day. Then when we moved into the actual main sessions, we decided to take a leaf from the TED Talk book and actually keep our sessions down to 20 minutes in style, and for them to be less in technical and more in future-reaching, high concept type of stuff. So we're able to compress 10 presentations into a few hours, and then we wrapped the day up with a Q&A Guru Palooza session, where people got to ask IBMers and members of the community various questions that were on their mind. So in a short day, a lot of people were able to get an awful lot of information exchanged, and everyone was participating in the same track. They weren't breaking off into administrators versus developers. We actually wanted to get everyone together to see each other's perspectives on what is going on. So that worked out to be quite well. And then Red Pill itself offered a second day, a Tack-it-on, where we offered 16 modules on modernizing Notes and with Notes and Domino. Various things that you can do for Notes client development and various things you can use the X Pages technology for. This was targeted largely at developers. So I think the event went very, very well. It was a new thing for us, and the feedback has been excellent.
That sounds really good. I especially like the idea of the TED Talk format. I think that would be very interesting to be able to see a whole bunch of speakers very quickly. Were they, along with their, a 20-minute talk, were they able to do maybe a question and answer after it?
Not as part of the actual sessions, because we wanted to keep them flowing.
Okay.
And so that's the reason for having the Guru Palooza at the end. So we basically asked people to hold off on questions during that part, and they could then roll those into the Guru Palooza session that we had at the very end.
Gotcha. Can you give me an idea of the speakers, some of the speakers that you had?
Yes, well, our notional keynote speaker was Scott Sauder from IBM. So Scott came down and gave us the latest on Mail Next. He actually showed us some interactive demos with the product that I believe is going to be shown in a couple of weeks' time. We had Tim Tripconi. We had Chris Wisnett, who I believe has been a former member of the month here, along with Keith Strickland. We had Darren Duke, did a very highly entertaining and amusing world according. See who else do we have? We had Nathan and myself. Lisa Duke gave us a session, and we had Lewis Richardson from IBM, who is an excellent storyteller, and he did a great session on how you sell business needs to technical needs to a business audience. So it was very mixed in its content, quite varied, and there were some really excellent sessions. I believe that they were videoed, and we're actually hoping to make them available on the Social BizArg video YouTube channel in the not too distant future.
That would be great. I would appreciate that. I mean, it really does sound like a wonderful conference to attend. All right, so we're running out of time, so I have to. If you've watched any of these, you know that this is the most important question of the entire interview, possibly of your entire life. What is your favorite movie and why?
Okay, so I thought about this question. First and foremost, if you're asking me for that advice, you're asking the wrong person. I have a 11-year-old daughter, and the extent to which I do get to go to the movies, she picks the agenda. So I would be picking something like Frozen or Despicable Me if I was to base it upon my recent viewings. But instead, I'd also say, because I'm a geek and I like watching videos, David Leedy does a Notes in 9 set of videos, and one of the best videos I've seen in quite some time was one he did a couple of weeks ago about the recent storm in a teacup that the community had about Java versus JavaScript. So if anyone's got, I think it's about half an hour or 45 minutes in length. If anyone is looking to watch something, they should go to Notes in 9 and download that, because it was an absolute riot. I'd highly recommend it.
Excellent. All right. And now I do have one last bonus question, and I think most of our audience here knows Kathy Brown, or at least knows of her. And so this bonus question, you have to blame Kathy for this. I interviewed her, I don't know, a few months ago, and she mentioned that she had been binge watching a TV show called Leverage. So I thought, well, I wound up watching it start to finish to the exclusion of everything else. So, my bonus question is, do you have a particular show, doesn't have to be current, but a particular show that you either watch regularly or binge watching or TiVoing it, catching it on Netflix, some show that you like?
Probably not, although when I do get the chance, I try and watch the AFL footy that's sometimes shown here in the US. So anyone that's sports-oriented that is looking for a new and different sport, you should be getting onto the Australian rules football, because it is definitely a happening sporting event, and something a little bit different from traditional American sports. So that's probably the best I could offer in that particular category, unfortunately. Because again, when I watch TV, it's with my daughter, and so
Gotcha.
most of the topics probably don't translate well unless you're an 11-year-old.
Well, Peter, it has been a pleasure speaking with you. I do appreciate you taking the time. And everyone listening, you might have heard him mention Keith Strickland, and one of my Member of the Month interviews is with Keith. Please look that up. That was a great interview. Peter, please take care. I look forward to your posts on the site. You are very knowledgeable and insightful, and it makes for some very good reading. So that's it. Thank you very much, everyone, and I will see you on socialbizug.org. Bye-bye.